this off later.
Yeah, it's a bit harder these days.
Have we started? I think
I
we
think
must
we
have.
have, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right then. Okay. We're not looking forward to the end of this, are we?
Yeah, there's no end of live broadcast button anymore, so
Anyway, so
it
we'll,
gets
we'll
hairy.
make do as best we can. Okay, first up, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a new article up. It's a fairly short one. And I mentioned before we were going to put this up, but a few things happened and we had to wait for a bit of time. And the article is actually a larger explanation of what happened with our two attempts to put the rocks in formation on Kangaroo Island or Carter to begin with, and then elsewhere within Ramajeri land. On both occasions, just at the last moment, that was stopped. The first case, the island was taken off the Ramajeri, and in the second case, the land was taken off the owner. And what that led us to, and I think I mentioned before, was the fact that we were left in a situation where we wanted the rocks in ceremony on Ramajeri country this year, and it just isn't going to happen. Okay, so that's led on to the first part of what I'm going to talk about here, because the article leads on to the fact after two attempts, we decided, and I explained this last time, the rocks and the rings and the skulls and everything declared they wanted to become part of this year. And they wanted people to come and do ceremony with them. And I did explain that we've waited and waited, and I've run it past, and I've been in constant contact on a weekly basis with the elders and others involved in the Ramajeri group that are putting this together. And that leads on to something else I'm going to talk about in a sec, because they will be on the online conference, and they'll also, a representative of theirs will be coming to our workshop. So these are some things I need to talk about, and I'll get to them in a second. But to begin with, I want to explain two things. Now, we did put up, and we told people last time we were putting up two workshops. Well, they went within a week, completely sold out. In fact, I think on two occasions we did two bookings on exactly the same time, and we're actually two over, but we're going to include them in that for now because it wasn't their fault. And we have a waiting list waiting to get involved in the next one. And ladies and gentlemen, it's now been up. It was put up a couple of hours ago. I'm letting people know about that. And I want to explain what's taking place with the first one and what's taking place with the second one. Now, I've got to make the point. The Ramajeri group are fully aware of what we're doing and backing this, and that's why they're speaking at both of these events to make it clear they are backing it. So that's not an issue. Now, with what we're going to do with the one that's booked out and the one that follows, and I'll get to that in a sec, because really for people who are interested, first one went within about 4 days, so you've got to be fairly quick. And what we did give is about 6 people have contacted us. We put it up about 3-4 hours ago, let them know straight away, so it gave them a bit of a head start. Right, what's going to happen is we're going to do rock ceremony throughout this from start to finish. And you've got to be agreeable to that. There'll be smoking. There'll be something, I'll talk about some more, that's placed across your forehead there, which is part of that too. And we're going to give each person 10 minutes away from the group to sit inside the rocks. We said that before, and we explained what was going to happen, and we made a guarantee. In the first conference, I think we're charging $150 for those who are not subscribers, and for those who are, $120. And for that 10 minutes, I did say that if you are a person that's obviously interested in caring about the future and want to see a change in everything, then I'm guaranteeing that you'll get a result. And if you don't, what we're prepared to do is, even though it only makes up 10 minutes of 3.5 hours, we will refund 1/3 of your price. If it's 150, you get 50 back. If it's 120, you get 40 back. You get that back straight away, because obviously for reasons I don't understand, they weren't prepared to give you what the others got, and as a result of that, because you didn't get the product, you get the money back. That's how confident we are about that. And that leads on to something I want to talk about. This is going to be a bit longer, Evan, unfortunately.
Is it?
Yes, it is, unfortunately. I'm covering a few things, and it's the charge, Evan. You know the one, the woo-woo charge.
Oh, that one.
That one. I just want to explain something about what's going to happen with the rocks to give you an idea why I'm so confident about this and why I'm going to answer this question. I want to tell you something about Ros's Rock 1. Okay? Before anything, I don't want someone to say, oh, you had thoughts implanted in your mind from your elder that this was going to happen, therefore you got involved in that. Nothing like that. For a year and a half after we had this rock, Kano would say nothing about the rock to me, and finally he did and started telling me stuff, and I realised, my God, what's going on here? But this was during the stage he did not make any commentary, right? And all I knew at this stage was, this particular stage, I knew the rock was powerful, I knew it was a men's rock, and that was about the sum total of what I knew. And then what took place was, I've mentioned this before and I'll explain why I'm doing it this time. There was an occasion where scientifically I looked at each of the rocks we collected at that stage and said, look at that. Technology evident that should not be part of stick, stone, bone and open fireplace technology. Therefore, this is part of that story. I wasn't looking for the woo-woo stuff at the time and didn't give it much thought. I remember when Ros was getting extra rocks, it was the same rule each time. I'd say, no, 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 or that one. Look at that. What's going on with that? That doesn't make sense to me. Look at that coat. That's definitely been stuck on. I was looking for that. And it happened like this. It all changed the time that my wife was painting Ros's Rock 1 for Ros. She was doing a picture of it. And I was 3 rooms away. And she called out, and as she called out, all she said was, called my name. She didn't say anything else. And I knew 2 rooms away, she touched the rock. I knew she was painting it, right? And I said, it's a men's rock, so don't touch it. And she understood that, well, nearly did. But the point was, I knew that she touched the rock. And I came and saw her, and I knew what I needed to do, because she said she had a severe pain running up her arm. And I knew she was being punished. All this stuff just hit me at the same time. I'm thinking, what am I talking about here? But this is what I knew. So I grabbed another healing rock, rubbed that against the arm, then smoked her, and the pain went away. Now I asked her sometime later, years later, if you'd rate this from 1 to 10, what would the pain be? 1 just being a dull throb and 10 being agonising. What would it be? And she said it was an 8. Now here's the point. I was doing science at the time. As a scientist, it's called observe and look at the consequences of your observation and try and work out what it means and just do it empirically. So empirically, I'm saying this. The rock told me my wife touched it before she did. Well, how did I know that? I didn't guess it. She just called out. She could have fallen over, dropped something, broken a glass or anything. Why did I know straight away that happened? Secondly, not only did it do that, at the same time, it did something to my wife that created a pain that was running up her arm. That is a scientific fact. Now, what I have between those two is very short stories, and literally I have dozens of them where these things have happened. But this was the beginning of the process, and you've got to understand, from my point of view, I was left with 2 pieces of science that don't fit. 1, that the rock told me what my wife had done, and number 2, the rock then was trying to kill my wife and would have done so if I didn't use another rock to stop that, which is the 3rd piece of science that doesn't fit in. But these are facts. My wife has been at a couple of conferences before this all stopped, and a couple of times she's even spoken about the facts, and she's never lied about it. She's told people every time this is exactly what happened. She touched the rock, just moved it, it's sort of reflexing to get a better angle because the light was better, and just brushed it. And from that minute of skin on rock contact, that was the immediate part of that story, the immediate part of that story. And of course that leads on to one of the things I'm saying about when people, what we're going to do when we actually present this, and I'm leading up to why I've said that, is I'm asking people to bring along some sort of natural material that can become gloves, whether it be cotton, wool, leather, I don't care, silk, but it must be natural. And they will be hands-on. but you will never be allowed to touch the rock skin on rock. That's just not going to happen. And the reason's very simply it didn't offer that. What it did say it wanted is 10 minutes per person sitting inside there. And that's what we're going to do. Now what we're also going to do is at the end of the 3.5 hours in the first session, which is 3 hours of presentation, then half an hour for question and answer, I'm going to ask people during the question and answer to fill in a sheet, which has probably got about 5 questions on them, and they'll be ranked from 1 to 10. Now I don't, and I make this clear every time, when you sit between the rocks, it's not my business and I don't need to know, and I'm not allowed to know. It's not my job to know what happened. That's between you and the rock. It changes for each person, and many people tried to tell me, and I've told them the same thing. Was it important? Extremely. And I said, well, then leave it there. But what I do want to do is, we've got so many people attacking me saying I'm not going to do science. I want to try and do science. I'm going to ask people to give a score from 1 to 10 for about 5 questions about their experience, but I don't want to know the content of it. And then I can use that data over a period of time, and we do it time after time, and we're going to try and do it 6 to 7 times in the time we've got left till December. And I want to try and prove to people that this is real in every scientific effect. By gauging and measuring and analysing the answers, we get percentages on what happened to each person in relation to these things. And we can start to work out what these rocks are offering in different ways. So we're going to ask people to do that as well. But it's going to be done within ceremony. Okay, and then what we're going to do primarily is we're going to spend probably 20 minutes sitting around in a circle with some outdoor chairs. And if it rains, don't worry, we've got plenty of verandas here. We live in the rainforest, and we've also got a massive studio for people where... And what's going to happen is we're going to spend maybe 20 minutes just looking at and getting introducing to, and these people being introduced to the circle. And then for the next close to an hour and a half, we're going to have an unusual situation where I'm going to do a presentation. I'll talk more about the rocks. Then I might do the skulls. Now, during that period of time, some people are going to be there for a while, then they're going to leave for 10 minutes, and they're going to come back and they're going to mess a little bit of it. That's not really a big issue, and I'll tell you why. In the finish, we have half an hour of question and answer, and there might be a few questions you might want to answer, ask about what they missed or what they weren't sure about, and it doesn't hurt to go over things a second time. Okay, so, and we could just, it's an open-ended thing. And my point being this, that the main experience here has to be the rocks. Everything else is secondary to that. Now, what happens between, say, this we get through to about the 2 hours through, from 2 to 3, then Leah and myself will join together and we'll talk about another part of this equation, because the rocks are one part of the equation, the skull's another, and I'll be talking about that for a while too. And the third player are the rings. So they are the things we'll be talking about. I won't be doing carry-on, I won't be doing the standing stone site and other stuff, because that's not relevant to what we're talking about this time. We're talking about the makeup of that circle and what's in there. And there will be rings, there will be skulls, and there will be rocks, plenty of rocks. It'll mainly be rocks because there's so many of them. So that is what the workshops will be about. Now, you may miss little bits of the skull one, but you've got the chance later to ask questions if you're not sure. And that way, we get both things going at the same time. So people will be coming in and out a fair bit. And the actual presentation, I want to make the point with that. It's going to be more like a classroom than a lecture or a workshop, insofar as you'll be touching stuff and looking at stuff. But I want you to ask questions, but I want them to be like it was when you were in grade 4 in school. You didn't get up and make a 20-minute statement about your beliefs on 6 different things and have an open-ended question at the finish, which was really answered halfway through. You had a very quick question and waited for an answer. And it was probably 2 sentences. I want it to be like that, so we can continue with the flow as we go. So if there's something that comes up and you're going to have a piece of paper, if you want to write down longer questions for later, you'll get a chance to do that. We'll set that up. So primarily, here's the deal with that. First one went very quickly. Second one is now on offer. Now it's changed. Instead of 3.5 hours, it goes to 4 hours. And why does that happen? Because normally this will be Leah, myself, and Evan. We'll be doing this. But because of the second part of the story with the rocks, because we've had two failures where we've joined together again. Now, the first two failures, I was heavily involved in that. Right? I went down and did ceremony, met Kano and Christine quite a few times, brought the rocks down section by section, did the whole thing, left some rocks there. Second time round, the people approached me about giving us some land, and you'll read about that, and I convinced all the other group to come in. This one came from them. It's their story, and it's all about computers. I remember yesterday I was at the meeting. One time they were talking about wallpaper, and it was for a backing behind people, and fair income. I have no idea what they're talking about half the time. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to ask Darren McElroy, who's been on the show before, who's Ram and Jerry, and they've agreed that he will then speak at our workshop for half an hour, 20 minutes on Kano, and why it is the whole thing is dedicated to him, and then 10 minutes on their plans for the third attempt to get this display up. And I don't want to do that because they came together, they made this one up, therefore they should do it, and I'm just going to ask a few questions. Darren will do this on his own, and then that's the first part of what I wanted to talk about, our online conferences. Now this second one goes for half an hour longer and has another speaker, and as a result of that, because it does go longer than another speaker, it's not the same price. Now the other ones were $150, and I tried to justify the reason why we're doing that, because we only do it once per month, and this is supposed to keep my son and Leah going, and they have no other job. So I've got to try and look after them as much as I can, and it works out that they end up with, if we do this properly, they end up with about $1,200 to get them through 4 weeks. That's not much. Well, that's what they're going to get out of it. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. And as I said, if we wanted to be greedy, we'd have 15, 20 people each group, and no, it's 8. Oh, of course, there might be 2 9s because we had a double booking twice, but that's okay. We're keeping that short. Now, what we have done is we've raised the price because I have another speaker, an original speaker, and he's speaking on behalf of the Ram and Jerry. And whatever I raise the price by that amount, that goes directly to him, all of it. So we don't get any more. Okay, so it's going to be $190. I didn't want it to be $200 because I think that just doesn't sound right. And on Darren's going to be getting the extra $40 from each person who buys a ticket. That'll go directly to him, not to us. So I want to make the point, if anyone thinks, oh, hang on for a sec, how come you get asking more money after the first one? We're not actually, we're not doing that. We're giving you more. We're giving you another speaker, and we're saying, well, that's worth $40 for half an hour, and it is. So that's what we're doing. That's the first one. Now, with our online conference, which comes the week before, that's changed also. Now, it's still about the Hopi prophecies. It's about the Blue Kachina prophecy, and that's why Donnie will be coming on, and he will be talking about the old teachings, that the words are written in that prophecy, that you must learn the old teachings. So I thought, right then, let's do it. Donnie is a culture man. I mentioned this before. If you haven't seen this, he's worked for the National Parks and Wildlife as a sites officer. He's been to plenty of places. He knows about ceremonies. He knows about the old way. He's fully committed to it. He's spoken on internationally before. Well known. And I thought he would be a great choice to talk about the old teachings. So that's the first thing I picked from that prophecy. The second part was about the signs in the sky. Now, we've been speaking about, in fact, we just got a new one again, more lights coming out. I'm starting to think it's coming out of the ground, not coming from the sky and going in. To begin with, particularly with the Bosnian one, I really thought, oh, that's coming out of the disc. But I now believe that it came out of the water into the disc. I think it's gone the other way. But, having said that, Gunyari, I hope I got that right, my apologies if I didn't, is a original lady. Now, if we're going to do old way teachings, it's no good just having a man. You've got to have a lady. You've got to have both sides, male and female, and she's going to be talking about that. But more importantly, she's going to be talking about these so-called things that science will look at and have no explanation. And she's got film of something stunning that took place in the sky, and she filmed it. And she put it on, I don't know, YouTube or something, and got over 2 million hits. But here's the point. It was amazing. But she just put it up. There was no commentary with it. And when you talk to her and listen about what happened, and she gives you the background settings and describes the atmosphere, describes how she felt, her reaction, the reaction of the animals all around on the farm. When you put together the full story and hear what she went through and how it affected her, you get a better understanding of not so much saying, well, what is this? But you start to work out what it is. Because when it was just put up, it was just an amazing thing. I've never seen it before. And the one thing I can tell you is I don't know what was going on, but I know what it wasn't. It wasn't natural. So we decided that covers two things at once, and we're going to do that. And of course, I'm going to be looking at, Evan and I, we're going to pick up, last time we did some archaeology in Egypt, of Egyptian archaeology in Australia, and quite a few people said that was a fairly convincing piece of work, and I thought it was. But I think the second part's more convincing, because this time the Hopi prophecy tells about the Pleiadians and them coming and being part of this, and the brothers coming through the sky. Well, we got to prove that part. So we took that part on, and we've looked at archaeology in Australia and reports from great historians and archaeologists, and a combination of evidence in different shapes and forms that proves they were here. The Seven Sisters were here. And we believe we've written the best overall account of aliens, Pleiadian activity archaeologically in Australia. So we're presenting that. And of course, to add to that, to finish that up, we will have a panel of Ramengeri elders. 3. Darren is 1, Christine, Carno's wife, and now that Carno's passed on, honestly, you know who knows the most about the men's business that Carno was involved in? It's Christine. Look, you don't fully work out how this all goes together. Believe me, it may be men's business, but your wife, she knows. She knows what he was doing. He told her. He shared with her. People really haven't got this story right about men's and women's business. But we've also got Umbalara. We've got Umbalara there. She was chosen by Carno to sort of lead and take his lead. And she's part of that. And then we've got Darren, of course, who's also a Ramengeri person. And those 3 are going to give a talk. Now, Christine and Umbalara will also give you a rave and a chat about Carno and the things he did. Okay, and that's what Darren's doing in ours. And Darren will have a bit of a talk about that. Not as much, he'll do more with us, but he'll do a little bit of that. And then they as a group will talk about what they've put together. And the reason is very simple, because it's all computer stuff, honestly, and they've got all this stuff going on, and I'm backing them. I'm standing behind anything they do because I have to and I want to. And Carno made it clear that if I took ceremony, I was locked into this, and I'm quite happy to do that until the day I die. But I don't fully understand any of it. Therefore, it's really dangerous for me to do it, so we've called them on. So it's all about the rocks in different ways. Okay, all about the rocks in different ways. The Ramengeri want this done this way. They want the workshops up. First one's gone. Second one, it'll probably go fairly quickly. And yes, we're doing one each month, but we can't plan further ahead than that. We've got the second one up now, the third one. And what we are going to do, we're going to do 3 with the same material each time. Okay? And then after that, so that if people have come to the first one and want to come back and do that again, and so that we don't want to do something, we can't do things time after time after time, we'll get bored. So after the first 3, we change it completely. There'll still be the rock workshop, but all the content that I do and Evan does will be completely different, that wraps around it, and the same with Leah. Okay, she's going to be doing the first time Atlantis and Lemuria, and her experiences and stuff like that in Atlantis on a very close and personal level, and her understanding of the rings and all that sort of stuff, and we'll do that together. The second time round, we'll be looking at Mesrith and all the stuff that she's been doing with him and other aliens, and we'll do that one, and she'll be doing that, and we'll be looking at probably the Standing Stone site, Carry On, and some other stuff completely different again. And we want to break that up as much for the fact that some people may want to come back and do some more rock ceremony again, and if they do, well, yeah, we'll give them that chance. But remember, anyone that books on one day cannot do a second booking on the next day. That's the rule. It's our rule, and it's the rocks rule, it's the skulls rule, it's the rings rule. Okay, and secondly, I've got to make one other point. I've got to be so careful about this. I'll make it very clear now. At no stage is anyone allowed to touch these objects, because if you do, you break ceremony. And if you break ceremony, primarily I'm going to have to basically say, no, you can't do rock ceremony. You can stay for the rest, okay, that's fine. You can listen to all the other material, but you can no longer do rock ceremony. It means you can't sit inside the rock. And for that, if you break ceremony, there won't be a refund. We're happy to give a refund for someone who's not broken ceremony, goes inside and get no reaction. I don't believe that will happen. I've seen two people who weren't right in there, and they felt very uncomfortable, and we know what that means. We know how that's shown. You can't, I'm not telling people, so they can't try and hide it. It's just natural, it comes out. 2 people out of 200. But you know, both those people I actually knew before they went in. I just sensed they weren't right for the rocks and whatever else was there, but there's more there now than before. I've got to make that point. And that's not a criticism. It's just a statement of the development you're up at the moment. And what it's saying is there's something that you haven't really come to grips with yet that you probably may get sorted out in time, but this wasn't the right time. It's not a judgment, but I've got to make it very clear. Nobody is allowed to touch the rocks skin to rock. That's why when we have our workshop for a while, you put the gloves on, you can look at them, but don't rub them against your face, please, because that would break the rule. And that would mean for the rest of that workshop, you take your gloves off, you wouldn't be part of it, and you wouldn't sit between the rocks. I've got to make that very clear now. So if it does happen, and I know it won't, but if it does, there could be no arguments and no grief about it. You just slipped up, and believe me, they do test you. I've had many people tell me at different times, but they're talking to me, and I said, yes, read Lord of the Rings. They do it all the time, but they're testing you. And you know what the test is. You're not supposed to do it. Believe me, they've tested me many times too. So look, I've spoken far too long. There's an article up there at the moment that explains really where we're up to with the rocks. What I didn't put in was what was going to happen next. I want them, the people involved, to do that, and I'll do that both at our workshop. The second one, the first one, as I said, is gone. It's sold out. The second one is now open at the moment. So that's the first way to do it. And also on our next online conference. The online conference comes first, and the week after the workshop follows. And we'll be doing that each month. Online conference first, the week after the workshop. And we'll try and get the 7 in as we can. And we'll see how we go. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for putting up with me, and now I can't turn the damn thing off. Evan, are you around?
Yep.
This is where it gets interesting.
So I think
Here we go.
What we do is we just
go to home.